For as long as we can remember, we've been sold this idea that our brains are like machines, that they just inevitably rust and slow down as we get older. But what if that whole story is wrong? What if your brain isn't a machine at all, but more like a garden? A garden that you can actively cultivate, nourish, and make stronger for your entire life. Well, it's time to find out how.
You know that fear, right? That little worry that creeps in, that one day the mental sharpness just won't be there, that memories might get a little fuzzy and we'll lose that quickness we always took for granted. We see it happen, we read about it, and we can't help but wonder, is that my future? Is my brain's best before date already behind me?
Well, here's the good news. And honestly, it is a total game changer. The answer to that fear is a huge no. And it's all thanks to this one incredible concept, neuroplasticity. This isn't some self-help theory. It's the biological fact that our brains are constantly rewiring and remodeling themselves. This right here, this is the fertile soil of your mental garden. It proves you're not just a passenger watching things decline. You're the one in charge.
Okay, so if our brain really is a garden, then the very first thing we need to think about is the soil, the nutrients. And I don't just mean what you learn, I mean literally what you eat. So let's dive into the science-backed blueprint for feeding your brain. This is called the Mind Diet, and it is a nutritional plan engineered specifically for brain health. And the key here isn't just a vague eat healthy, it's all about precision. Look at how specific it is. At least 6 servings of leafy greens a week. Berries at least twice a week. These aren't just random suggestions. These are the core building blocks for creating a resilient mind.
So, what's the actual payoff for being this specific with your food? Well, this number is just staggering. A major study found that people who stuck closely to the Mind Diet showed a rate of cognitive decline that was equivalent to being 7.5 years younger. Just let that sink in for a second. You can't actually turn back the clock, but it turns out you kinda can when it comes to your brain's performance.
So how does this magic actually work on a microscopic level? Well, let's just take one of those ingredients, fish. The omega-3s you get from fish are like a special forces unit for your brain cells. They fight inflammation, they boost blood flow, and they literally protect your neurons from the kind of cellular damage that causes decline. It's a constant battle in there, and the right diet is what arms your brain to win.
All right, let's move from nutrients to planting new seeds. A lot of us think, doing a crossword puzzle is a solid brain workout. And hey, it's better than nothing, but it's more like a casual walk in the park. Real brain growth comes from something more like intense training. And the difference is absolutely critical. It's the gap between just practicing what you already know versus actually struggling with something new. That struggle, that's where the new pathways are built.
For example, take learning a new language. This is pretty much the gold standard of brain workouts. Why? Because it forces you to build entirely new neural highways from scratch. You're not just remembering a few words, you're creating new connections, getting better at switching between tasks, and beefing up your working memory. You are literally rewiring your brain's hardware to be better, stronger, and faster.
So, we've nourished the soil and we've planted some new seeds. Awesome. But any good gardener knows that a thriving garden needs daily upkeep. You've got to strengthen the roots, and just as important, you have to clear out all the weeds and waste.
We usually think of exercise as something for our bodies, right? For our muscles, for our heart. But it turns out it's one of the most powerful things you can possibly do for your brain. Specifically, it protects a little area called the hippocampus. You can think of that as the central root system for all your memories. It's wild, but regular activity, even just walking, leads to less shrinkage in this critical area as we get older. By moving your body, you are directly strengthening the very foundation of your memory.
Now for the cleaning part. Every single day, just by thinking, living, and being awake, our brain creates a ton of metabolic waste. Picture all the sawdust and debris that piles up in a busy workshop. And as this quote explains, while we're awake, there's just no room to clear it all out. The gunk just builds up, clogging the whole system. So what's the solution? Meet your brain's overnight cleaning crew, the glymphatic system. And this process is just incredible. When you go into deep sleep, your brain cells actually shrink, which increases the space between them by as much as 60%. This opens up the floodgates, allowing cerebral spinal fluid to rush in and wash away all that metabolic junk, including some of the nasty proteins that are linked to diseases like Alzheimer's. So sleep isn't just about rest, it's a deep cleaning power wash for your brain.
And the takeaway here is really, really simple. If you're not getting enough high-quality sleep, your brain is not getting cleaned properly. Period. So to make sure this nightly power wash is effective as possible, you have to prioritize that deep sleep. That means a consistent schedule is key. And here's a wild tip. Some studies are now suggesting that sleeping on your side might actually be the most efficient position for this waste clearance.
So we've nourished the soil, planted new seeds, strengthened the roots, and cleaned out the waste. So what's the end result of all this work? What's the harvest we actually get to reap from all this mental gardening?
The harvest has a name. It's called cognitive reserve. The best way to think about it is like a resilience fund or a buffer for your brain. By consistently doing all these things, eating right, learning, exercising, sleeping, you build up this extra capacity. This reserve allows your brain to handle challenges, whether it's just normal aging or even injury, and keep functioning at a super high level. It is the ultimate payoff for all that effort.
So let's boil this whole owner's manual down to a simple daily checklist. It's this: nourish your brain with the right foods, strengthen your memory's foundation with a walk, actively challenge your mind by building a new skill, and finally, give your brain the time it desperately needs to clean house and repair itself. See, these aren't huge, impossible changes. They're just small, consistent acts of cultivation.
So that old story, the one about inevitable decline, it's just that, an old story. The real science shows us something much more exciting, that we are the primary gardeners, the chief architects of our own cognitive future. The tools are right here. The blueprint is crystal clear. So the only real question left is, what are you going to build?